All right, just intro for our people watching on Twitch. I'm going to go ahead and stream my screen. Unfortunately, uh, the raid trap is not working. Really stinks. We should typically be able to. Um, I go into presentation mode, and you can pull up the link on your screen and stuff like that, and I can highlight things, but it's working for the old raids, but for some reason it's not working for Sepulcher. So I apologize. If you want to go ahead and pull up my screen on Discord, we'll go over the fights that way. So I'm going to give, the way that I'll do this is I'll just go over some really fast cliff notes on the fight, really fast summary, just so you can kind of get your mind wrapped around the most important bits. All of these fight strats that are created from the Ready Check Pull videos. I'll be honest, I have not looked through the raid trap presentation here, but it is a good tool to actually visually see the mechanics as we're going through, and it's a little bit more in depth than the Ready Check Pull videos can be, and you can customize it. So if you're wanting to come back at any point and catch up on any of the stuff that you might have missed, then all of these videos and Raid Mythic Trap links are in each of the boss channels, so you can review it. So if you're viewing my Discord screen here, you can see, if you're not familiar with this resource, you just go to Raid and then find the boss that you're looking for. Or again, if you just click the link in the boss channel, it'll take you directly here. Select what difficulty you're looking for, and then if you want to filter it a little bit more, you can select your current role, and then it'll go over the different mechanics. So, Vigilant Guardian is the first fight in the raid. It's essentially just a big ad killing frenzy. There's 3 different phases. In short, phase 1 means kill small ads to fuel the big ad, stand in the big ad's shield to prevent dying to the main boss's explosion, and then eventually it'll spawn bombs and we throw them to knock the boss out of his resting place. And then throughout the fight, it's just a lot of dodging stuff, and then a burn phase in phase 3. So that's what the fight boils down to. As far as the actual animations, you can see there's a lot of different small ads that we're going to need to kill, and as we kill them, this needs to reset real quick, but as we kill them, they're going to fuel this big ad, and you can see there's a big circle. So we'll stand in it because it's not shown in this image, but there's a big explosion that the boss does. We need to make sure that we're standing in it to be safe. On heroic difficulty, we need to kill those big ads after the room-wide explosion goes off, and it's going to drop an orb that somebody, preferably a fast class that has movement speed, it can pick up, because it does make you waddle pretty slow. So things like Death's Advance, Death Knights, or Shaman with Ghost Wolf, or anybody with Night Fae would be helpful to run it. So you pick it up, run it, and you have an extra action icon. It does change when you get closer. It has kind of like a mechanical border around it, and that will mean that you're ready to throw it rather than just drop it. So this is showing the exposed core. This is where we stand in the big ad and dodge use the shield to prevent the room-wide damage. Other small mechanics in phase 1. So there's going to be beams that target a player. You just move back away from the rest of the group. See how this character moves back, and it's going to create a line. Pretty slow moving, honestly. Should be fairly easy to dodge. It's a first boss, so it's not going to be super duper punishing, I don't anticipate, especially with the speed that it's moving in this clip. Just random stuff to dodge throughout. Tanks, if we swap frequently on this guardian looking mob, it's going to help us stay alive a little bit longer. He puts a stacking vulnerability. So that's all phase 1. Phase 2, the boss will roll out from, looking for here. Yeah, I'm not sure where it's showing it, but I'll just talk through it. Phase 2 is the boss will roll out, and we essentially just DPS stuff, run debuffs away. Players will be marked with a mechanic, and you have to run away from the raid, and it's going to drop these orbs, and they'll condense on the spot that you were when it expired. So marked players will just need to run away and then dodge the balls on their way back to melee if you're melee or something like that. And then once he reaches low enough health, it's going to be phase 3. It's just lust and burn. And for some reason, I don't have the health at which he 15% health to kill is when phase 3 starts. So should be a pretty simple boss. It really just boils down to dodging stuff, kill small ads to fuel the big ads, and then run the bombs to the boss. So let's look at the second boss here. Any questions on Vigilant Guardian? I apologize for my inept driving of Mythic Trap here. Okay. Can somebody talk real quick just so I make sure I'm not like just talking to... Okay, cool. All right, nice. Just wanted to make sure that I wasn't messing something up. Second boss is going to be Skullx. So on this fight, there's going to be two groups. So there's the most important part of the fight is something called ephemeral dust, which it's not showing here, but there's a debuff that everybody's going to get that's called ephemeral dust, and it's just a dot that ticks on you, and it's permanent, but it can be removed with one of the fight mechanics. There's going to be 3 people that are targeted. It targets the 3 people that are furthest away from the boss, and those players are going to get extra stacks of the debuff. And so what we're going to do is we'll assign 2 groups of 3 dust baiters, and those dust baiters are going to be the furthest ones back from the group, and the healers will know who they are in advance so that they can prioritize them with extra spot heals and stuff, and we'll swap them at a certain point in the fight. But essentially those players' job is to be further back to make sure that they're baiting extra stacks. Ranged players that are tanky but also combined with mobility, maybe like a warlock or something like that, is pretty good for this role, because they need to be somebody that can survive the extra damage but also be able to dodge the widest part of a frontal cone that he does, so with like a teleport or something like that. So we'll start off the fight. You know, I'm gonna drive this the way that I am comfortable with. I'm gonna use the videos that I actually prepared these from, because I actually know where this stuff is that I can show. So sorry, give me just a second. I'm gonna pull that up. I'm gonna try to use this resource,
hey,
but since since the presentation mode is not working, if you just joined, it's not working to where I can highlight. I should be able to present and then I could highlight different parts of the fight for you, but unfortunately it's not working. So so this fight, we're going to set up 2 markers. One's going to be right by the boss, one's going to be 30 yards away, and you can see there's 2 groups of dust baiters that are going to be, let me find a moment where it's showing that they're going to be the furthest back in the raid behind everybody else. The fight boils down to 3 different attack sequences. He does a tank combo. It's kind of similar to Guardian from the current raid, in which we need to taunt swap. He does, I'll just talk about it with Ollie. You guys don't need to know about it, but there's a tank combo that he does. And then the other event that happens is he'll spew out a big frontal cone, a big black cone in front of him, and players just need to move out of that. And then the third thing that he does is he will teleport to that 30-yard marker away where there's a clump of players. It has the default looking soak swirly, and we all just need to stack in it, and that is actually what removes our stacks of That's what removes our stack of dust. So let me see if I can show you what the... So this is what the big frontal cone looks like. It's just going to target a big area. You just move out of it. The swirly... It's just the smoky, swirly icon that we've seen in both of the previous raids. But essentially we just stack in that and it removes it. Not finding the swirly. Ugh. Apologize. I've practiced driving this, but apparently not enough. So let's see if this shows. So dodge the frontal cone. And then there's going to be a soak. It's not even going to show the soak. Okay, so anyways, it's a swirly. We all stack, and that will remove our stacks of the debuff. So the order of the different fight encounters goes tank combo, then a frontal cone, then a tank combo, and then another frontal cone, and then we stack and rinse and repeat. It just does the same sequence over and over and over again. Should be a pretty simple fight. Any questions about that one? So really it just comes down to managing our stacks, kind of like the Wicked Bleed debuff in whatever it's called, Stone Legion Generals. Okay, Artificer Zymox. I'm really excited for this fight. I think that's going to be really sweet. So it uses a lot of the same mechanics as the original Zymox fight with the portals. The only difference is, well, I mean, there's lots of differences, but the biggest difference is this expanding ring. So this big white ring is pretty much a one-shot if it touches you. And so the whole fight boils down to using the portals to dodge the ring. And the rings can either expand or they can contract. Now, it sounds simple enough, but there's a lot of other factors that kind of make it difficult. So at the start of the fight, in phase 1, there's only 2 phases in this. There's a phase where we're fighting the boss and a phase where we're fighting the ads. So phase 1, we're going to start him on the edge of the room, and he's going to target players with the stasis traps, just like in the original Zymox fight. The difference is on Heroic, they never go away, so we can't use players with immunities to clear them. We can on normal, but they won't clear, actually, on Heroic. So players that get marked with stasis traps are going to run to the edge and try to drop them as cleanly as possible, giving as much room as possible for us to do the rest of the fight. So that's how we'll manage the stasis traps. And then he'll target players with portals. One will always be on a tank, and the other one will be on somebody else in the raid. So when portals happen, you want to have the tank is going to drop them on the edge, and then the other player is going to move it to the middle of the room as close to that center relic thing as possible, so that we can use it for the circles. There's going to be small white circles that target players. You can see right here these small white circles. It targets players and then it bounces around and puts a stack of a dot on people. It's really, you just spread those out like you would any other AoE circle like that. But players that are stacked are going to get double dot stacks, and it's going to eventually make it very difficult on our healers. So essentially we just spread out with those white circles. Now what makes the portal mechanic difficult is the tank is going. So the taunt swap is kind of like in the original Zymox fight, where he'd target the tank with a glyph of destruction or whatever it was called, and that tank has to run it away from the rest of the raid, and it explodes and deals fall-off damage. That's still a thing, but the part that's different about it is when it explodes, it's going to pull the entire raid to the tank that exploded. So the tank or the raid that you have to move far away from the tank that has the debuff on them, and then when it explodes, it's going to pull them. So it all just boils down to using that mechanic to also help us with getting to the portals. So an example, it's going to take some experimentation to to see how that's going to work out, but here's an example of what that could look like. As the fight goes on, there's more and more circles. So there's only one circle that happens until he hits the first set of adds, which I don't have the percentage written down here, but it starts off with one circle, and then later, after the first set of adds, it's 2 circles, and then from 50% to kill, it's 3 circles that happen in concession, so you have to work around those. So here's an example of what it could look like. So the first circle goes out, you have the portals placed, the entire raid goes inside to take the portals to bypass that. The tank gets marked with the debuffs, so the entire raid runs away and the tank stays close to the portal. The effect explodes. He pulls the whole raid into the portal. Everybody takes the portal and then immediately spreads out with the white circles. And then the third circle happens, so you take the inner portal to go to the out. So this one's it sounds really complicated, and it probably is on first attempt, but the nice thing about this is it's very, very scripted. I believe it's the same every time, is my understanding. So it's one of those things, like once we get it, we'll have it, but it's going to take a little bit of coordination to actually get where we should be moving at any given point with how the portals are going. One last thing, you can tell which direction the circle is going to go in advance based on the center relic. If there's like a little effect, if the effect is going, see if I can find the footage of it. If the effect is going down, it means it's going to push out. And if the effect is sucking up, it's going to suck in. So see right here, it's moving up. So as soon as it reaches the top here, it's going to begin sucking the ring in. And then as it's going down, you can see it's going to push the ring out. So you can tell in advance where the circle is going to come from that. So that's all phase 1 stuff. Phase 2 is where the adds come down. And for the adds, there is one add that really matters, and that is the Acolyte. Let me see if I can find that. So the Acolyte is the big adds. And not finding it, but there's gonna be lots of little adds, and we really want to funnel damage into the Acolytes. There's gonna be 2 of them because they're going to be casting an ability. If the ability goes off, it's a wipe. So I can't find the part of the video that shows that, but essentially that's it. It's just gonna be funneling damage into the Acolytes and killing them before they reach full energy to cast their thing. So that's the fight. This one's going to take a little bit of practice and coordination, but I don't think it'll be too bad once we understand how the portal mechanics work. Any questions on that one? Right. We're cruising right along. Let's take a look at the next one, which is going to be, so that was Zymox, Sausage Knee, Dosinya. So more circles in this fight. So this one, it's black circles this time. In short, this fight boils down to not touching 2 circles before the debuff runs off. There's going to be players that are marked with some kind of a barrage thing, similar if you did Sire Denathrius, you know the lines that you had to soak. It's kind of like that, but you are not allowed to soak 2 of those effects consecutively. Otherwise, you'll die. You take increased damage from the next time you soak. So you'll see right here, she has these like metal orbs around her. It's kind of short, but you can see these metal orbs that are around her. Staggering barrage. It's this big golden arrow she puts on somebody in this line. We're going to have the raid divided into 2 equal groups, and we're going to use those players to soak the line. So you can see right here, they're standing in the way, and there's 3 hits, and it knocks back the targeted player each time. And so we'll alternate between soak groups. We'll call out soak group 1, soak group 2. So that is the staggering barrage mechanic. Um, when she summons these domination cords, their ads, those need to be targeted as fast as possible because they spawn these puddles, and the puddles make the fight much more difficult because there's a lot of movement in this fight. So as soon as the domination core comes up, we want to burn it down as fast as possible because they put down these swirlies that result in leaving these pools. Another mechanic that we're going to have to watch out for is this frontal beam. She puts out this like cascading black frontal that grows one direction and then it closes. So those two things together are not necessarily difficult in themselves. It's just that's also going to happen with the main feature of this fight, which is the circles. Periodically, she's going to get a shield and start casting Inevitable Dominion like this. Go ahead and back up a second here. So you can see right here in this footage, she casts Inevitable Dominion and she gets a shield. It's kind of like the mythic Kael'thas barrier. We need to burst that down as fast as possible. If she finishes her cast, it's a wipe. So we're probably based on our damage, we're probably going to need to allocate DPS cooldowns specifically to that. We could lust it, but there's plenty of those mechanics, so we're going to have to find other ways to deal with it. We'll probably just lust on pull to make sure that everybody's cooldowns are up and try to reduce the overall length of the fight, but we'll see as we go. Periodically, she's going to cast these black circles. So you can see right here, this pillar behind her is smoking black, and in a moment, it's going to shoot out a black circle. Disintegration Halo. Oh, they cut the footage. Okay, right here you can see it. So the first black circle is going to come out, and you can see right here the player has a debuff that lasts for 5 seconds. If they get touched with another black circle within those 5 seconds, they die. So there's a nice animation here where you can see kind of an idea of how the fight will go. So the boss casts Inevitable Dominion, and so you break the shield, and then immediately move to wherever the first circle is going to spawn. And so this is just showing the black effect that where the circle will come from. And so you take the first circle and immediately start looking for where the second circle is going to come from and move to the opposite side of the room. So for example, in this example, the second circle is going to come from here. So they're following the edge of the black circle away from where the second circle is going to spawn. And so by the point that this hits, the debuff is off and they start moving. So they move down this way because the next circle is going to come from the top here. And then in this example, they're moving all the way across because the next circle would be coming from right here. So as soon as a circle goes off, you move to the opposite side of the room of where the next one's going to come. So we'll have the 4 corners of the room marked, and we'll call out which corner we're moving to, and that'll be on the raid leader to be looking for where that's going to be. So, but that's essentially the fight. So in short, break the shields when they come up, dodge the black pools, burn the ads as fast as possible, and move to where you're called to dodge the circles. Teleports and vulnerabilities and all that can be really helpful to bypass the circle if you get caught, because the difficult part of this fight is we're moving around like that with all the black puddles on the ground and the beams that she's shooting out and all that good stuff. So that's what's going to make it difficult. So movement abilities like soul shape and stuff are going to be pretty nice. Any questions on that one? I'm not going over specific mechanics like taunt swaps and stuff like that. I'm just mostly going over the feel of the fight and the primary mechanics, and the smaller details. You can either look at the document that I linked, the Google Docs, or look at the Mythic Trap overview for things that are particular to you. Okay. Let's take a look at the next one, which is Prototype Pantheon. So this is a pretty interesting take on a council style fight. There's going to be 4 different bosses, each modeled after the different Covenant leader. So we start off with the Necrolord one, which is called War, and the Kyrian one, which is called Duty. In each phase, there's going to be one of them that needs to be kicked, especially War, the Necrolord one. If the bolts that he shoots are very painful, so those definitely need to be kicked. And then the fight boils down to learning what each boss adds mechanically to the fight. And then at the very end of the fight, it's all 4 at the same time. So we're starting off with these 2. The bosses will stay stacked and they'll stay pretty much stationary. We're not going to be moving them around. There are adds, but they should die ideally fast enough to even get value from moving the bosses. So DPS, when the adds come up, that we'll just need to swap off. So I talked about the kicks. So you can see right here, there's going to be adds that pop up, these necrotic ritualists, and they're going to start channeling this big puddle in the center. And they need to be killed quickly, otherwise the puddle will grow and overtake the room. The puddle reduces healing and I believe damage done by 100%. So the adds need to die very quickly. What we'll likely do, there's 4. We'll have the ranged immediately target the far adds and melee swap to the close adds, and then move around and finish them up, and then move back to the bosses once they're dead. But killing the adds is top priority whenever they come up. Next part of this first phase is War again is going to cast this green swirly on players, and it's I believe a 30-second debuff. When it expires, it will immediately kill the player and then jump and start on a new player. It is dispellable, but if it's dispelled, it will kill the player. What the players have to do is move into these bubbles and then get dispelled. If you're dispelled in the bubble, it removes the effect and the player doesn't die. But the bubble cleared instantly there, but he talked about not staying in the bubble, so I don't actually know which one it is. But while you're in the bubble, you take 100% reduced healing and you deal 0 damage. So it needs to be dispelled quickly. Kind of like fragments in the 9, it needs to be top priority to get in there, immediately get dispelled, and immediately get out to go back to damaging the bosses. One more mechanic. So Duty is going to be spawning this big Devos-style wind that pushes you, and there's also going to be these swirlies. You have to dodge the swirlies. I believe if you get hit by a swirly, it does a ton of damage and also permanently stuns you until you're broken out. So just fight the wind and dodge the swirlies there. But I believe that's all for these 2 bosses. So in short, kill the adds, kick War, and then if you get the green swirly debuff, move into the bubble and get dispelled, and then dodge the swirlies. When one of the 2 bosses hits 50%, it phases. So ideally we want these as equal as possible. So that when it comes to the last phase, we don't have one that's significantly higher. So we'll need to watch damage here. After it transitions, the next 2 bosses come out, and that's going to be Absolution and Renewal, which is Venthyr and Night Fae. So the Night Fae one, Renewal, just puts a bunch of stuff that you kind of have to dodge. She's going to put these blue tornadoes down that essentially need to be dodged. She's also going to put this annoying stampede that runs through different bisections of the middle of the room. And it's not too hard on its own, but when it's combined with the Absolution mechanic, it's going to be a little bit awkward. So we just need to make sure we dodge those. It deals a knockback and some damage and stuff. And you can see the tornadoes here that we'll need to dodge. So just things that look bad, just don't get hit by those. The big mechanics in this fight are, also she's going to cast anima bolts just like War does. We just need to kick those. I don't think they're as painful as War's, but they do need to be kicked. So probably before the dungeon starts, we'll assign kick groups, especially for the last phase when everything's going at the same time. Just make sure that we have people prioritizing the kicks. And tanks can take a big brunt of that as well. these seeds are a very interesting healing mechanic. So healers that played in Castle Nathria, these are very similar to the canisters on Kael'thas. Um, when first of all, the Absolution has a ticking dot on the entire raid that gets more and more painful as the fight goes on. But that's counteracted by these seeds. If the seed dies, it deals a ton of damage to the raid, and it's bad. So we don't want any of them to die. But when it's healed to full, it puts a big buff on the raid. It heals everybody, and it also puts a stacking healing received increase, which is huge. So, and I believe the buff lasts for 25 seconds and is refreshed every time a seed is healed up. So the optimal way to do this is to have all the healers, first of all, just keep the seeds from dying and then focus in on one seed at a time, heal it up, and then wait a couple seconds and heal up the next seed and then the next seed. And if healers do that, they can actually keep the debuff up, or the buff up, excuse me, for pretty much the entire phase. So very, very powerful effect. The big thing that's going to be dangerous in this fight is Absolution's Hand of Reckoning. So, people who played in Sire Denathrius will remember this ability. It sucks you in, and you have to run away from the explosion. So it'll show that in just a second. So, Hand of Reckoning. It's going to prove me wrong. It's not going to do it. Okay, it's right here. All right, so it sucks you in, and then all players have to run away. Pretty easy, but the tricky part is everybody's going to get these prideful style, like the prideful affix in Mythic Plus for the first season. Everybody's going to get these prideful style projectiles that's going to shoot off from them. And so you have to run away from the Hand of Reckoning and then spread out and then dodge all of these projectiles. So that's going to be fun while dodging the Frogger, stuff like that. So that's going to make movement pretty difficult in this fight. But as long as we spread out and people are being aware of their positioning, it should, with some practice, be pretty good to go. I was theory crafting some options of maybe like, especially if the Stampede is in a good position like this one is, tanking the boss over closer to the edge of, we'll say over here, for example, tanking the bosses here so that we get sucked in and then we can use this hemisphere of the circle to run away and avoid the stampedes. But that really depends on the stampeding position. If it spreads out to be more like an X, then that's not going to work. But players that are really comfortable and competent and can have movement abilities to go over the stampede would be beneficial. Like for example, in this one, this mage goes over the edge of the stampede to allow slower classes to stay on this side, so that everybody has as much room as possible. So for people with a lot of movement and that are comfortable with crossing the Frogger of animals, that could really help out. Yeah, it's going to be a lot. It just really, it does. It's kind of like the 9. It just boils down to knowing what each boss contributes to the fight, practicing, getting comfortable with those, and then doing them all at the same time in the last phase. So when one of the bosses hits 50%, then all of the bosses come down, and so you have to do the kicks, you have to kill the ritualists, you have to heal the siege, you have to dodge the wall. You have to get sucked in for Hand of Reckoning and run away and then dodge the projectiles. You have to dodge the swirlies with the wind. So there's a lot of stuff to keep in mind, but if we break it down one mechanic at a time and get competent and comfortable with those, then eventually it'll just be, doing all the things. So pretty crazy. Potentially 4 target cleave, which we haven't really seen that in a boss. 4 target, like, sustained boss health cleave, which is really exciting. So pretty cool damage profile for a lot of players. But that is prototype Pantheon. That one's going to be a bunch of fun. Also, all bosses need to die within 20 seconds of each other, or they heal to full. So that's why it's important to make sure that they are both to 50%, so that when we enter this last phase, they're all at 50%, and we don't have somebody, with like 80% that we have to try to focus on or whatever, and try to call that out while all this other junk is going on. Any questions on that one? I I believe that so after the first one dies, all the rest of them have to die within 20 seconds of that first death. That's how I understood the mechanic, but I'm not entirely sure. Also, just a heads up, I don't know how it looks on Discord. I apologize if it's like laggy or whatever. You're having problems with it, you're welcome to also view it on Twitch. I linked it earlier. It's Twitch/Ragnon Gaming or whatever, and that should be with less latency than the Discord stream. If it's looking fine for you, then sweet. But that's another option. All right, I don't think so. Just a very, very attentive group. You guys want to come be students at my school? All right, let's take a look at the next one. Lehuvim. This one looks pretty cool. The room is absolutely gigantic in this boss fight. It's like ridiculously sized. So the fight has two different phases. There's a boss phase and an ad phase. So we'll start off the fight by having the boss towards the edge of the room. So this is the boss here. The tanks need to face him away because there is a big frontal cone that he does that we want to make sure that we're avoiding pointing at the raid. And the raid kind of wants to stay behind him. And there's going to be players that are marked with some kind of a yellow circle, and it's going to spawn a little spiky moat. I'm going to be referring to them as moats, but they look like this. So you can see here's the yellow circle. As soon as he sucks in this ball, it's going to leave this spiky star moat thing. You need to move away from it as soon as it spawns to avoid triggering the trap. If a moat is touched, you can see these yellow circles right here. These are permanent yellow puddles. They cannot be removed. They deal a decent amount of damage, and they also slow. So we want to avoid touching the moats. And so you might ask, how do we get rid of these moats? That's a great question. There's another mechanic right here. Oh, so you can see right here does a knockback. So this player got knocked back into the moat. So positioning is going to be marked players come over, drop the moats to the right of the group, and then return as soon as the spiked moat drops. Because when the boss does the knockback, you don't want to get knocked into the spiky moats and create more problems. There are going to be players who are periodically targeted with this big yellow arrow that we'll see in a second here. And the yellow arrow so you can see right here, this person has it. I think this is a better shot of it. So this person has the big yellow arrow marker. And if you move over, don't touch the spikes, but stand near it. After the explosion goes off, it's going to destroy all of the moats within range of you. Now you can see it deals a decent amount of health, so healers are going to need to make sure that they're topping off the person before, especially if they accidentally touch a moat or something, which they shouldn't do, but stuff happens. That's how we're going to clear the room of all these spiky moats. Now the room is pretty big, so as long as we're putting them towards the edges of wherever we are, that should leave plenty of space to deal with the ads. There's a tank mechanic that's pretty crazy here. I'll talk about it with Ollie, but it's essentially just a taunt swap like every other mechanic for tanks. But it's one of the more involved ones. So the knockback, the moats, destroying the moats with the circle, that's the gist of this part of the fight, the boss phase. And so you can see right there, that's an example of the frontal mechanic that the boss is going to cast on the tank. So that's why we need the boss faced away. There's an extra mechanic on heroic. I don't know if he's going to go over this. Yeah, he is. So we'll. It's not really important. Once the boss hits 100 energy, so he has this energy bar here, you can see up in the corner. Once he hits 100 energy, he goes AFK, he becomes invincible, and we go to kill ads. Now, it's going to take the ads a second to spawn. You can see right here the raid is frantically running over to stand in this yellow shield by the ad. That's because the boss immediately starts casting this very, very punishing room fatal damage that's reduced by 90% by standing in one of these golden circles. So as soon as the boss goes AFK and starts doing the ad phase, we want to immediately all use movement abilities and run and be inside of one of these circles, and we can also start killing one of these ads. And it needs to be killed before it fully spawns, otherwise it heals to full. So in this ad phase, there are not all ads are created equal. Some ads really suck and some are not too bad. So here's the different types of ads. Acquisition, these are the ones that suck the most. So they pulse raid damage. They put a debuff on everybody that increases magic damage taken. On death, they deal a big knockback. They really stink. So we're going to try to prioritize killing these first. Ideally, we can kill it during its spawning phase when it's yellow like that. If we can figure out where it's going to spawn and get to that circle and kill it first, that's huge. The Guardian is not too scary. It really it spawns an orb that deals periodic raid damage. I'm assuming the orb looks like the ones that kind of float around the room in the Guardian fight in the current raid, Sanctum of Domination. But I don't know for sure, but it's not too scary. Degeneration, they just target random players and channel beams on random players. They're not too scary. They could potentially be if they randomly all target the same player with a beam, then it can be a little bit crazy. We'll probably need to use an external on that person, but in general, it's just random damage. And then the defense matrix creates a big shield around it that reduces damage that all of the other ads take. So the order of priority, these only spawn on heroic, by the way, so we're not going to have to worry about this on our first clear through. The order kill priority is acquisition. Ideally, these should never, these need to be killed before they even spawn. And then the second priority is the defense matrix, so that they're not shielding everything else, and that's about it. And then the other stuff after. But big priority is killing the acquisitions. As soon as all of the ads fully become active, then the boss comes back. So you can see right here. I don't know if the footage is going to show it, but the boss will become active, possibly even while ads are still up. We want to kill the ads as fast as possible, but as soon as all of the ads are active, the boss comes back up, and we want to kill all the ads before swapping back onto the boss, because the boss is going to resume all of his other mechanics with the moats, the explosive circle that destroys the moats, the knockback, the tank mechanic, and so we want to ideally have all of the ads dead so that we're not having to do all that at the same time. That's the fight, though. It really just comes down to dropping the moats cleanly, focusing on the ad kill priority, and yeah, that's about it. Any questions on this one? Okay. Next. Actually, our second to last fight, Hollanders. Just a heads up on this one, it was reworked, and I don't know if anybody knows what the rework looks like, so this is potentially old. So we are possibly going to need to use our Raider brains and figure this out on the fly, because it could be completely different than what I'm about to explain. So this boss boils, the most important mechanic on this boss is the orbs. So he's going to be here in the center, and there's going to be these bluish clouds. Let's see if I can get a picture of it here somewhere. Oh, there's one right here. This blue kind of cloud looking thing is going to spawn these black, or no, sorry, they're not black. They're black on the image. They're going to be these glowy orbs that are going to slowly float to the boss. If a single orb touches the boss, it's a wipe. The way that you destroy the orbs is by walking through them. And so you can see right here, they're moving in. Players just walk through them. It deals a moderate amount of damage to the player and destroys the orb. So not too tricky, but what makes it difficult is the orbs. I don't know if it's just on heroic or if it's on normal and heroic, but in any case, the orbs are going to have these shields on them that protect them. And if a player walks through them, it'll deal a bunch of damage and it won't actually do anything to the orb. So the shields have to be destroyed, but they can't be targeted. So the shields on the orbs have to be destroyed with another mechanic that the boss is going to do, which is called Light Shatter Beam. So the boss is going to target a tank with this big Light Shatter Beam. The tank's job is kind of like on Remnant, how you face the beam towards the anima orbs or whatever to break the shield. It's the exact same thing. So he's going to target a tank. The tank's job is to position that towards an incoming orb. And then there's actually 2 beams that are cast consecutively. So ideally, like for example, with this orb setup, one tank is right here. As soon as the beam is like almost done casting, then the other tank taunts so that he'll be targeted with the next beam and he can destroy the second orb. So it can be beam beam. And then if we can have other, I don't know if the boss like deals raid, wipe damage or whatever if the tank gets too far away. So we'll have probably range DPS or fast DPS just focus on walking through the orbs. The orbs need to go down, and the tanks are going to be kind of focused on destroying the shields rather than actually catching the orbs as they come in. There's going to be lots of potential people to catch it, so as long as we're all aware that that's the most important part of the fight, it should be fine. And next mechanic are these Earth Breaker missiles. So everybody's going to be targeted with this gigantic yellow circle. We spread out a little bit, and then after the initial damage, it's going to spawn a brown puddle, kind of like the Stone Legion General puddles, the whatever they were called. And those are going to explode. So after you drop the circle, you move somewhere safe, whether that's out or in, based on your positioning. Doesn't really matter. But after a brief charge, they're gonna explode. So that's the next mechanic on this fight: is just spread out and then get safe. And then once the ground clears, you can go back to doing your thing. That is. Oh, there's one more mechanic, and that is the dispel. So a player is going to be targeted with a dot, and when that player is dispelled, they're going to put a permanent slow puddle on the ground. So you can see in this graphic, this ranged player got targeted, and so the healer dispels it. It drops a nice puddle. These are slow puddles, and they affect players and the orbs. So what is going to be likely the most beneficial thing to do is to actually get dispelled. I've said actually like 4 times. I apologize. We're actually going to stand in front of these clouds here and get dispelled so that the slow intercepts these orbs to help give the tanks more time to get the beam casts off. That's most of the mechanics that I know of. Once he reaches a certain health, he's going to start transitioning to the next room. And as he's walking, he's dealing raid damage. This is where mobile healers are really nice, like Resta Druids and stuff, because we're going to have to heal on the go. So players can freely DPS here, but they want to stay somewhat close to the boss because these doors do close and you can get locked out of the next room, which would suck. He's also going to put, you can see this explosion here. It has an expanding ring. Once it reaches full, it's going to knock back all players from the point of explosion. You can get knocked off these edges here. You can also get knocked back and potentially get locked out of the room. So everybody needs to stay mobile, stay close as he moves to his next room. And then rinse and repeat. He does that a couple times. On the third room that we get to, he goes into overdrive. He'll progressively deal more and more damage as the fight goes on, and it's a kill or be killed situation. So once he gets to the third room, we'll lust, and we will burn him down. So again, this fight was reworked, so who knows how much of this is actually accurate, but there we go. We'll just have to figure this one out as we go. Any questions on that one? So, they can pop the naked orbs, but the shielded orbs can only be broken by that tank mechanic, the light shatter beam. So if you walk through it when it has the shield on, it's just gonna laugh and deal damage to you, unfortunately. So yeah, it's gonna be on the tanks to make sure that the shields are off, and then it's gonna be on DPS just to make sure that incoming orbs get soaked, kind of like the first boss in whatchamacallit, Sanguine Depths. Okay. Um, no, I'm could look at some. There were also kill videos that I haven't had a chance to look that Moon linked yesterday, I think, in the different boss channels. So we can look at those and see kind of an approximation of how long the bosses are going to take. But no, I don't know off the top of my head. No problem. All right, let's take a look at the last fight that we know of for this week. Again, the last three are a mystery. It's going to be really exciting, and that'll come out in on whatever March 8th. So Anduin, the first in boss. So this is the first time we've had an end boss in the middle of a raid. It's you can definitely tell that they tried to crunch the raid together, and this was a potential end boss for this patch with intentions of another entire patch. So it looks like an awesome fight. I'm really excited about it. It's got a lot of Lich King-esque vibes and up groups and down groups and lots of end boss style mechanics. So before the fight starts, we're going to divide into two equal size groups, an up group and a down group, a home team and an away team. And the down team's job is going to be to get hit by this black frontal cone that he casts that looks like this. And so anybody that gets hit by this black cone is going to be sent to an alternate realm, and they're going to have some other stuff that they need to do. And that happens twice in each of these, we'll call these phase ones, Anduin phases. So we'll look at my notes here. So we divide equal size players. It's also a good idea to assign some players to CC. There's going to be some ads later on that are kind of like the ads in Huntsman Altamore. They need to be CC'd, otherwise they're going to cast something that's going to wipe the raid. And so we'll preemptively assign people to be the CCers to take care of those, so that we can kill them one at a time. So that's how prep looks. So here in phase one, the goal is to fill up Anduin's willpower bar. So you can see he's got. Just gonna have to look past the text here. You can see right now his willpower bar is at 0, and the way that we fill it up is with the down groups mechanic. So he's going to cast Kingsmore and Hungers. That's that big frontal black cone. The down group, they're going to be in a realm that kind of looks like this. There's a big ad. There's lots of little ads, and then there's some friendly ads. And so there's three goals. The DPS are going to focus on killing this big ad, Anduin's Despair. This big ad is going to restore 20 of Anduin's willpower. The little ads can be just cleaved down. We want to kill as many of those as possible, but mostly focusing on getting this big ad down. And then the healers are going to be working on healing up Anduin's Hope, the friendly ads, and ideally cycling between them so that we guarantee to get at least a couple of them. The more that we get, the more that we push up Anduin's willpower bar, the bigger buff we're going to get in a follow-up phase. So we want to kill as many and heal as many as we can. And if it, after a couple pulls, if it doesn't look like we have enough to, like kill them all and heal them all, then we'll need to focus in and maybe end with killing one Anduin's Despair, healing up maybe like 2 or 3 of the hopes, and then, a couple of the doubts. You're just aiming to get as many as we can. I don't know how the tuning is going to look, but that's the goal there for the down group. And does it really? Slash Pat. Yeah, you can do it, Anduin. Suck it up, Buttercup. So the ad phase, this phase is timed, and so if things don't die in a certain time frame, then the group comes back up anyways. So we want to, focus in and get as much down as we can. Next mechanic that we're gonna have to watch out for are these chrome arrows. These shoot something called Wicked Stars. It's kind of like the priest ability where it shoots out a boomerang kind of thing. Oh, you can here it's showing the willpower. That's going to matter for a follow-up phase. So the players with the chrome arrows need to move back so that you don't get hit on the immediate projectile going out. So you move back, and everybody else should. So it's both on the player, but mostly also on the surrounding players to watch if there's any arrows near you and don't get hit by the projectile because they hurt pretty bad. And so as it shoots out, you dodge it, and then you dodge it on its way back in. So I'll back it up here so I can show you a bit more on that. So you can see it shoots out, returns. Those are going to be pretty frequent throughout the whole fight. So that's just going to be something that is just going to take a bit of practice, and eventually it'll become muscle memory just to watch for those chrome arrows. That is essentially phase 1. Let me see if there's anything I missed. Who targeted Sardi? They're gonna just target whoever has the arrow. And then yes, and so the player marked with the arrow should move back away from the boss, and then it will shoot out from the boss to the marked player, and you can see he had time to dodge it on the way out, and then he should just be aware that it's going to come back in. Yep, no problem. And I'm sure there is some optimization where we could have like the whole raid stand on one side, and then players with arrows like move to the other side of the boss or something like that. But I think it might be equally as easy just to have people watch for where the arrows are and just kind of spread out. Kind of like the Huntsman Altamore arrows. Not on Mythic, but the heroic ones. Oh, sorry, there's more mechanics. Sorry, we're not done. Phase 1. Lots of stuff here. Okay, so he's going to target players with these circles. You do not want to touch anybody that has the same color as you. You're going to need to square dance and find your partner in do-si-do. So if you touch anybody that has the same color as you, it's a wipe. In this phase, it's a raid wipe. So the players with black circles are going to need to look for somebody that has a yellow circle and match up with that player. The way that they advise to do this is to have the players with yellow circles spread out and stand still, and then it's the players with black circles' job to find their partner and avoid people on the way. So you can see right here, for example, you got 3 people that are all fighting for this partner, and so this guy sees that there's some people up here available, so he lets this partner get it, and he goes to grab this second one because he was thinking that this person's going to grab this one, and that's actually what I believe that's what happens. So just kind of it's going to take some practice finding your partners, but that's what you need to do. You need to find the opposite color of you. Some other things to look out for: there are stacking dots that go on the entire raid. It's called Hope Breaker. There's a couple different abilities with hope in the name, so it's a little confusing. Oh, here's a example of the Wicked Blade. This is a pretty good visual. So, not Wicked Blade, Wicked Star. So he targets the player with the chrome arrow. He moved out to the max range of it. He's going to dodge the initial and then stay off to the side as it returns. So that's an example of how to deal with the Wicked Stars. He is going to put stacks of this Hope Breaker debuff on everybody. That's going to progressively deal damage, and then also the Shadow Word Pain icon. I forget the name of it. It's Shadow Word something. or domination word pain or something like that. But it's an 18-second duration, and it's just going to deal a bunch of damage. So those players are going to have to be watched and spot healed. Lots of spot healing potential in this raid, which is pretty cool. Throughput stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So, then another big mechanic. So this is very much a healer fight. There's going to be, it's an everybody fight, but there's lots of healer stuff. There's going to be a big barrier circle that reduces healing that everybody takes. And if it stays for too long, it's a raid wipe. It's reduced in size, and eventually it'll get diminished by healing past it. It's just like Sire Denathrius with the soak puddles. When players stood in it, it went away. It's the same kind of deal, but instead it's reduced by healing players that are within it. So when those come up, the entire raid's going to need to immediately stack in, and then everybody's going to need to start pumping heals to remove it. He said something kind of confusing in here. He said that it reduces healing, so things like Spirit Link and DRs are going to really help, but I don't understand how that actually helps with the throughput for healing past the debuff, so I don't know how that works, but maybe there's something I'm missing. But my understanding is throughput's going to be the big cooldowns that we want to use for those. So maybe popping 1 or 2 each time. We'll work on the healing cooldowns for that. The boss has an attack speed buff, so the tanks are just going to have to, swap back and forth and reset the stacks. The problem is when the down group is away, there's not a tank to swap with, so the tanks are going to need to use a defensive, and maybe we'll watch the up tank is going to need to be watched a little bit more carefully while the down group is away. So that's phase 1. Dodge the stars, move into the barrier and heal past it, up group and down group stuff, and that's the gist of it. Now he's going to cast... this is just showing the barrier again. Let's look at phase 2 coming in a second here. This boss is also pretty scripted. Phase 2 will happen after 2 of the frontal black cones. It's not on a timer. Well, it is on a timer. It's not health based. It's ability based. So after the 2 down group phases, then Anduin's going to enter into phase 2, and based on how much willpower he had, he's going to grant us a very powerful buff that at 100 willpower, it's actually 200% extra damage dealt, and I believe it's 90% damage reduction. So we want to get that willpower bar as full as possible so that we enter in this burn phase, and we lust, and we can get as much damage on the boss as possible. So he's going to spawn Arthas, Remnant of a Fallen King, and we're going to want to prioritize damage into him. I know, it's not fair. We're going to want to focus damage into him. Damage on this mob is really all that matters because it's also linked and duplicated onto Anduin. So this is where we're going to get the most damage in the fight. There's going to be lots of little worthless ads that spawn. We're just going to use like A-Bomb Limb and Gorfians and stuff to bring them in and try to cleave them down, but really the boss damage is the priority. Now on Heroic, there is another mob that's pretty interesting. Looks like Stitch Flesh right here. The Monstrous Soul. The Monstrous Soul can kind of just be gripped in and cleaved down, but there is one mechanic that we're going to need to watch out for. When he hits 30% health, he's going to start channeling a cast that is... once it's cast, it's going to put a 100% healing reduction on everybody. Nobody can be healed for the 10 seconds that it lasts. So a way that we can game that is we can just cleave him down. Once he hits 30% and he starts casting it, we have all the DPS swap and focus him down. And if we can burn him before the cast goes off, then we can totally negate the effect. But we'll have to see how that feels. It might just be better just to focus on the boss and just pop damage reduction and stuff during that and make sure people are topped off and hope we can survive past those 10 seconds. So that's the intermission phase. So really just burn. Looks a lot crazier than it actually is. After this intermission phase, we enter phase 2, which is very similar to phase 1. with some slight changes. So there in this phase 2, there's no longer the circles. Players aren't marked with the black circles, the yellow circles, so that's pretty nice. Instead, there's going to be these different ads that spawn around the room, and these need to be CC'd, kind of like the old strat that we did for Soul Render on Mythic, or for Huntsman Altamore. You just need to, sheeps, traps, things like that. Make sure that these are CC'd so that they don't cast. If they complete their cast, it's an AoE fear on the raid, and eventually it could create a wipe. So what we're going to do is we'll get CCs on everything, and then we'll drag the boss around to kill them one at a time like this, like it'll show in the picture here. So CCs, and then we just kind of work our way around the room, cleaving with the boss. We'll have to play around with this, but there is potential where you can grip another ad and kill 2 together. But in order to get that to work, we need to make sure that we get kicks and stuns and everything so that they don't actually complete a cast while we're doing that. But I'm sure that that's potential. So that's how the ads are going to work. One note with the Wicked Stars, we need to be very careful. Players that have Wicked Stars are going to need to make sure that they're not pointing it towards an ad. If a Wicked Star hits an ad, it gives them a shield and makes them CC immune. So it's pretty much a wipe. So people that have Wicked Stars need to be threading the needle, ideally putting it on the side of the room that doesn't even have the ads, just to add some extra safety. But don't let any of the Wicked Stars actually shoot out and touch the ads. It can be kind of difficult when we're in melee range and we're cleaving them down. We're going to need to make sure that they're pointed away from the current ad that we're on. So that's the biggest change to this phase. There's still a down group, so there's still going to be 2 down groups that go down with the black frontal cone while all this is happening. Same kind of deal as before, so that is phase 2. Next step is the second intermission. It's almost identical to the first intermission. It's just that we don't have lust this time, and there's going to be these walking walls that go through the middle of the room. Don't touch them; they will kill you. But that's it. We're just going to stand on the edge and just dodge the wall. So pretty easy. After this, we go into phase 3. So phase 3, we're on a clock. Hopefully we've made some good progress, and he's as low as possible on health. It's a lot of the same mechanics from phase 1 and phase 2. The black circles are back. I know you missed them. But there's no yellow circles this time. So instead of meeting with another player, Anduin has cast this big yellow puddle in the middle of the room. And by stepping into it, it removes your black circle. But when you remove your black circle, it deals raid damage. And so we don't want, it's kind of like breaking chains and stuff like that. We're going to want to make sure that we have staggered people removing them. If everybody removes them all at the same time, we're just going to immediately die. So maybe like 2 or 3 go in, drop them, and then the next person. You saw right there, I'm going to rewind it here. As people are stepping into the puddle, it's getting smaller and smaller, and eventually it just completely disappears. So there is not going to be enough for everybody to clear their black circles. So we're going to prioritize people that have cooldowns, maybe our warriors and stuff, people that have executes and stuff like that, to get dispelled first to make sure that they don't die. Because when the black circle debuff ticks down and ends, that player is dead. So we're going to try to keep our executes and stuff alive to finish off the phase. So you can see they're running in the puddles. We don't have lust because we popped it earlier. So this phase is just going to be attempting to kill him before the raid dies from the black circles. One more thing to watch out for, there's going to be stars that just kind of randomly move throughout the raid that need to be dodged as we're doing this. They silence you and deal some damage if you get hit by it. But that is Anduin. One last thing, you see this Empowered Hope Breaker spell. This is a new ability for this phase. It's a channel. I believe it does 3 pulses, and each pulse adds a stack of that permanent Hope Breaker debuff that is a dot, and it deals big raid damage. So that's going to be a good moment for healer ramps and stuff like that, is for those Hope Breakers. And that is Anduin. So lots of fun stuff in that phase. It's gonna again with all these bosses, it would be helpful now that we've kind of gone over them. Watch the fight videos, rewatch them. Try to look for specific things for your role. Mythic Trap is also a good resource again to look for animated versions of all the different mechanics. There are also some more in-depth things that to watch out for that goes over all of the abilities and gives you a summary of what to do with it. So the ready check pull is really just the bullet points, big mechanics, big picture things that everybody needs to focus on. And then if you're wanting to optimize a little bit more, you can look at all of the individual mechanics. So, any questions on that or any of the fights we've gone over? Okay, cool. So, those are the fights. Again, you can find them in the boss channels. So this first week, that's all that's available. Those first 8 next week. The next 3 will come out, and we're kind of going into those blind, and so is the rest of the world. So it's probably going to be a bit before fight guides are available for those. So we'll focus on those first 8. I think that's going to be plenty on normal and heroic until we have some fight videos available for those, um, and then we'll probably do a similar kind of thing with those last 3 bosses. I haven't put out an announcement yet, but some things that are coming down the pike we're going to be using this week to gear. It's going to be a ton of stuff. It's really going to be a very busy week with the raid and also the Mythic Plus gear getting ramped up and potentially new story chapter. I don't know for sure on that. But a lot to do this week. Going into the second week of raid, so Tuesday, March 8th. All raiders are expected to be at least 255 item level. That should be very approachable for even a brand new boosted character, because 255s drop naturally from plus 10s, plus all the raid loot, and so we really need to make sure that we're entering the second week of raiding at a good item level, so we're getting this heroic fully cleared, and we can get AOTC within the first few weeks, and then start getting into Mythic. So. If nobody has any questions, that's all I have for you for right now. So thank you for taking the time to come out. I'm going to be publishing this video, so if you want to go back and rewatch it or whatever, I'll be posting it to my YouTube channel. I'll put that link somewhere. And yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks, dude. Thank you. You guys have a good night.